Now this is Wikipedia, a picture of the moon. Now from there the moon looks very flat. There's no special structures, and I haven't found a picture from NASA that actually points this out. Now the actual radius, and this is how I estimated the height of the tower. This is the article obviously in Wikipedia. The radius of the moon, the equatorial radius is 1,750 roughly, there it is, so the diameter is 3,500. Now I'll quickly use that scale on this image. So there's just, so anything on Google, you'll just see anything interesting has been cut out. So the area I'm looking at is that very big area there. So when you enlarge it, you'll see that there are peculiar growths very high up in this area right there. Obviously it's been censored. Now what we'll do, we'll jump to this documentary. So I've just used this scale and used a ruler. That width of diameter is about 35 centimeters, so it's about 1 centimeter is 100 kilometers, and that there is half a centimeter tall, and that's the object we're going to be concentrating on. So it should be about 50 kilometers high. It's huge. Now the only way to do this is to actually play the video and see as the YouTube Pelon Cito user focuses in on that. So that's 50 kilometers high roughly, and that's the area that I've zoomed in on. Now it just looks organic. It doesn't look like a mountain. You've got the tubes coming down. It looks like a platform, and I'm going to focus on that black object right there. So it's a very unusual looking thing, and he actually zooms in on it quite well, and there's all these other structures around it, but this is one of the taller structures. So as I said previously, it should be about 50 kilometers high. Now that's actually huge. So it's a tower, and all of a sudden it's very flat on top. It's like a platform, and there's a black object, and there's tubes that lead down to the actual ground level. It just looks fantastic. So there it is there. And I'm trying to freeze that because I think I see that moving. It's actually looks as though it's got filaments or some objects that come off it. So when he zooms in, I'll try to pause at the key times, but it's very difficult obviously. So there it is there. That's a clear shot, and there we see there's a black. Now it could be a hole either. It could be even like some sort of ventilation shaft. I don't know what it is, but I see that a black object coming up right out there. So it looks round. There seems to be some sort of movement. Now that object on its own, if that's 50 kilometers high, that would be a scale of 1/5. So that's about 5 to 10 kilometers long, that black object. What on earth it could be, I don't know. So the trick is to try to pause it and try to see any good still images. It's not easy, but I think I caught one stage where something seemed to pop up. Here we go. Seems to be something up there and also coming down to the edge. And you can see those tubes that come down and lead down to the ground. And that one there is zigzagging as well. There it is again. Something seems to pop up right there as well. So either it's a hole or it's a large curved object. And I see what looks like a filament sticking out of it. So it could be a live object or growth. There it is. I caught one up there and one there. So it seems like the filaments actually just are drifting up into space. And it's very hard to capture this. I have to pause it One seems to pop up right there, and that's a photo which I've enlarged as well. So I've actually previously analysed the picture. There, as you see, it looks like a black filament just popped out, and if that's about 5-10 kilometers, that would be at least 500 meters high. So that's how close we're trying to get to the scale of what's happening here. So I'm just trying to process that picture and take a snapshot of that, a black object that just popped up. And we'll just continue now. It's gone back in. It's very difficult to sort of see this, but that's obviously, it seems as though it's actually moving. There are some filaments on that object. Obviously, if this is 350,000 k's away from the Earth, this magnification, obviously it's not that easy. Here we go. Now the light is changing. I'm trying to take one more picture now. It just seems as though I've caught objects that are coming out of there. They're like filaments, or they're very difficult to focus on and take pictures. That's a clear image there. If you look closer, it looks like a porcupine type of object on there. So it could be a hole for ventilation where these things are actually flowing out, or it could be a solid object. So I'm just trying to pause it and see if anything else pops out of there. And it's not easy. So let's just return that to that key movement right here. It should be about it right there. So we actually take it forward. And it's hard to work out, are these objects just filaments loose like some sort of coral? Is it a hole where it's a big ventilation tower? And it's very, very difficult. I'll process the pictures now. I think that's about enough. So these are the pictures I'll try to enlarge. I'm trying to focus on that mysterious black object on top. It seems to have one filament going up now. That's about 5 to 10 kilometers long. There it is again. So the whole thing looks organic. It doesn't look like a mountain. There it is again. It looks like it's actually coming over the edge there. And it seems to be like some sort of coral where there's filaments loosely floating around. It's very hard to get a clear image on that. There it is again. Rather than being a hole, it seems like it's a growth. There's filaments on there and it comes over the edge there. That's a clearer picture. It just looks like that's coming over the edge. A few of the processes, and there it is. So it seems to be absorbing sunlight. Yeah, so it's a very flat platform. It would absorb a lot of sunlight and reflect it. Maybe that's the purpose of this. It's very hard to work out what it is. So there it is again. It comes over the edge. Another image. Another one, getting closer. At that height, it would be pretty easy to float and just the actual processes just float off it, because there'll be very low gravity at 50 kilometers. There's one process that points out, which I caught. There it is again. There it is again. There's that process that popped out. That's a harder picture, harder one. There's that tower. So obviously if that's 50 kilometers, that'll be about 1/5. So it's about 5 to 10 kilometers. And there it is. It's like a V-shape platform. That object's nested right over, and there's some processes, white processes, hanging over the side. And here's the start of the tubes that lead down to the ground. That's an excellent picture. There are those tubes on the right. Seems to be like a V-shaped structure. There's a platform there and that black object on it. Amazing, isn't it? There it is again. It just looks like, rather than a hole, obviously I've seen the top of it now, so it seems to come over. It seems to be composed of filaments, like a coral that actually floats in the ocean. This is how that sits on the platform and floats in space, but it's obviously attached to it. So what's the function of it? What's the function of the tubes that lead down to the ground level? Obviously it isn't just a rock formation. It seems to be organic. It's the only word I can use. And there it is again. I've got one very good zoom out of the series where I've actually focused in on that black object. So there it is there. Here we've got what looks like a rounded cylinder type of entrance on this side. There's some filaments hanging over it, and it looks to be like composed of two bits there. Now let's return to these. Let's go to the end and just analyze all these other photos of the objects near there, which I haven't used this platform to do that, so I'll just go through that quickly. And there's all sorts of growths. That one's very good. That one's good as well. And here's that big tube, which has like a darker head. If you actually take your head away for about 1 meter from the screen, you'll see it's just about into that hole. It's got a very black aperture on that side, or entrance to that tube. What these tubes are, I don't know. There's that hole in the crater, which looks like a filament's coming out, or a ventilation shaft. Here's that very strange object that looks like a hornet's nest. It's probably 10 or 20 kilometers high. It's got that big hollow area there. The images are fascinating. It just shows our life happening. That's probably the best one. Now, using this platform, there's a very good color that shows it's like a cloud that sticks out, or a very fluffy formation coming out of that hole. There's one bit of it, and there's two filaments there. That's a closer look. So it looks like exhaust or cloud fumes. Now we'll go back to the original, and I'll just go back to the original pictures and also throw them on. So we'll start on this one here. This was right next to that object, which was on the left of us. So that could be about 20, 30 kilometers high as well. So these are great images. Now, there's our mysterious object there, the 50 kilometers high, roughly, I calculated. There's that object that seems to be floating. And that looks like a triangular type tower. Here we see what looks like filaments, like on a coral, that hang off it. Here's our object again. That looks like it's floating. It's like a hole or entrance. Here are the tubes that lead off our object. There's that dark thing on top, and they look like to be feeding off it or into it and then going back to the ground, like a huge tree or something. And this is on the left-hand side. What it could be, I don't know. Could it be just a normal growth? There it is there, again, that black object. It just seems to sit on it like a big cactus, or a big flower has an opening, and these are the filaments that actually sit right on top and absorb all the sunlight. That looks like a huge mushroom. So let's go back to the start. These are just other pictures, and I'll lead to that next. That looks like that big tube thing that leads into that hole with a very dark end on it. There it is again. They're very hard pictures to process, those ones. There it is again. So you can actually see it's more like a tube there. That's actually from another video, but I'm just trying to point out all the strange things. Now here's that black object, and that thing that just seemed to pop out right there. So that's about 5 to 10 kilometers wide. That would be about 500 meters tall, that object. And it seems to be like filaments from a coral that are actually are waving in the sea loosely. There it is again, very rough looking, porcupine-like. And there's one other shot of it. So that's all I can possibly do with these images. They're very hard.